Thanksgiving. A time to eat turkey, see parades, to fight to the death with your identical younger brother about whether said brother gets to feed all of your friends to a strange crystalline alien entity in space. Well, at least if this is Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1. For Thanksgiving, I decided to go back and take a look at the first time we get to meet any of the android crew member Data's family. In this episode, the crew comes across an identical android to Data named Lore. And Lore, as is immediately apparent, just based on the whole way Brent Spiner portrays him, he's evil. He's evil, in fact. This episode, I don't watch a lot of the first season of The Next Generation because it's just not as good as later seasons. And watching this episode made me go, you know, Star Trek the original series came out in the 1960s. Star Trek The Next Generation came out in the 1980s. I think season 1, what they were trying to do is go, what if we had Star Trek come out in the 70s? Because it's got some of the effects and stuff as they do in the 80s. But it's just as goofy and heavy-handed as some of the original series episodes are. So they're trying to hit that sweet spot right in between. It's not bad. Like, it's really not like a bad piece of television that I watched. It is different than what I'm used to because, again, I don't go back and watch the first season of The Next Generation very often. Captain Picard is a bit of an asshole. He's a bit of an asshole. The costumes are a little bit different. The whole thing just has a more, like, less grounded sense of the way the characters speak and the actors portray them. Throughout The Next Generation and then into Deep Space Nine and Voyager, a lot of the way these Starfleet characters act is like normalized and made to be so that way, yes, they are actual like people, but here they are definitely like characters on a show. I don't know if that entirely makes sense, but that's the way that it felt, at least in this episode. There's a whole bit at the opening where Data is looking in a mirror going, chew. And, like, I'm not I think he did it even goofier than I just did it. He's trying to emulate sneezing, which at first I was like, oh, why did they spend some time doing that bit? But it does actually kind of relate a little bit to an experience with Wesley and Lore later on in the episode. So that was clever. And so some parts of this are, like, it's a decent thought. There is some good stuff that goes on here, but then there's also, can we talk about how in the third episode of The Next Generation, we learned that Data is, and I quote, fully functional. That means that when Dr. Crusher and the chief engineer, who is not Geordi La Forge in this episode, are putting together the pieces of Lore, that means they handled an identical copy of Data's. This is the episode where Picard goes, "Shut up, Wesley." And then he's like, what do you mean, shut up, Wesley? I'm saying if I were an adult, then you would listen to what I'm saying, and then his mom goes, oh, shut up, Wesley. Yeah. I like Wesley as a character. I watched The Next Generation originally as a kid, mostly with my grandpa, and as a kid I was like, I like Wesley. But now looking back at it as an adult, I still do like Wesley. But in the later seasons, because in this first one, there are so many episodes where it's, man, the kid knows what's going on, and the adults, who are supposed to be competent Starfleet officers, are completely and utterly clueless. Throughout the second half of this episode, Lore replaces Data because they look identical, and Wesley is the one who's going, hey, I think that's what has happened, and the evidence is not overwhelming. Lore does a good job, but there is evidence to support this claim. Wesley goes to the room and there has been an altercation between them. One of the two androids is unconscious on the floor. Of course, Lore switched their clothes. when Wesley first arrives, Lore does his completely unexplained but signature twitch on the face. Lore smartly tries to explain this away by going, I, Data, have been practicing Lore's facial expressions. How does that look? And Wesley goes, I maybe wouldn't do that right now. I, for a second, thought that you were Lore, which was a good catch on Lore's part, but, you know, if I were Wesley, I would have casually mentioned that to Picard and co. And that should have been enough to have them go, this is a suspicious situation. And then when Picard tells Data, make it so, Data goes, what? Which is stupid anyway. I mean, make it so is a pretty obvious, like, make it so, make it happen, do it. Like, it makes sense as a thing, but Lore's just like, what? I don't know what this means. And then Picard has to go do it, like, whatever it is that he's like, do the command that I just told you, obviously. So that should have been an immediate, huge red flag that they all just go, what a strange moment, and completely shut it down. But then the most damning bit of evidence is when the crystalline entity is attacking the ship, Data comes on and is like, let me talk to it. Hello, crystalline entity. I identify myself as Data. I suggest you stop attacking. And it does. And they're all just like, man, Data's so good at his job. What? That makes no sense that worked. You fall in your shoes, Captain Picard, at that moment should go, okay, there was an altercation between the two. Wesley, being a smart and competent child, has told me that initially there was a mix-up of twitching. He didn't know what was happening when I said make it so, and now here he is speaking to the crystalline entity that was going to destroy us, and it is listening to him. There's something off here. Not, shut up, Wesley! Irritating writing. So, a fun episode. Get to see some fun acting of Brent Spiner. The beginning of Next Generation's proclivity to give him wild and crazy characters to play other than Data. But some of the trappings of the first season of The Next Generation, not the best writing. Actors don't seem fully committed to their parts yet, and for good reason. The writing isn't supporting them being fully committed to playing people as opposed to characters yet. And Picard is a dick throughout the episode. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this episode of The Next Generation, Datalore. I just thought that it would be fun to go and look back at a family-centered episode for Thanksgiving. Obviously, Star Trek has a plethora of these kinds of episodes, and maybe in future years I'll look at some of the better episodes on that spectrum. If you have any favorites of family episodes of Star Trek, let me know down in the comments below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and have a good week.